Happy Joe's hits the franchisor hot seat. Coming up next. All right, Tom, I know your story, but for our audience, they may not know your story. And so it's such an easy question, but you're going to have a good answer to it. How did you accidentally fall into franchising? What's your franchise backstory?
I got into franchising kind of by default. Back in the early 1980s, I went to work for, at that time, a little itty bitty restaurant brand called Red Robin. We had 5 restaurants only in Seattle. And my background had been all corporate stores. And at that time, that's all they had was corporate stores. But they wanted a franchise, and that became my introduction. And then from then, I just got better and better and better at it because it's really relationship building. My job over the years has been how to help other people make a lot of money and grow the same brand that I happen to love. And one led to another, and I ended up here at Happy Joe's a lot of years later, because I said that was like early 1980. So
obviously, like franchise growth is a component, but you're not just franchise growth. You are a leader over the entire organization. If you had to weigh the importance of areas, and if we broke it into operations, customer experience, marketing, and then you put franchise sales over here, like how do you weigh the importance when you get involved with a Happy Joe's? Say, okay, first I got to fix these before we can start being a good opportunity for a franchise buyer.
Yeah, that's exactly how the process goes. I mean, when we finally came to the conclusion that I was going to take the job and the Happy Joe's was going to take me on to lead the company, the first year and a half really was a lot of resuscitation. A lot of analysis. What are the strengths? Like a SWOT. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. By discipline. By marketing, by purchasing. By operations. All those elements, and then you just take it climb one hill at a time. And if and over time, you develop the people around you that they can climb the hill with you, so you don't have to try to just manage one hill at a time. And like I said, after about 18 months, we were really ready to roll. And it was right around that time that I hired Kat to come in and head up the franchising for me, because I don't have the time to sell. I'm fine with coming in and closing or massaging a deal or some things like that. But because I do have my finger in a lot of pies, I'm engaged, in all the purchasing contracts, and all the marketing, all the new product development, and in the beginning, I drove a lot of that myself. I mean, until they caught on to some of the things that I wanted to see doing, I had to say, okay, go make me this. Well, why? Let's make it, come back, let's talk about it, and then I'll explain the why behind it. But let's go see if we can make it first. And it just builds from there. And the other part is it is truly relationships. You have to have the franchisees buy into, in the old days, we'd say we got to get them to drink the Kool-Aid, right? They got to buy into the same, vision that I have of the company. And when I came in, it was I don't want to say a rough time, but it was it was like a drift in the middle of the night without a rudder. The owner had passed away. 5-6 years before I joined the company had been sold, and the franchisees just didn't feel like the couple of guys that came in before me gave them any confidence, in the brand for the long term. So part of what I had to do was not sell them, but allow them to look into my soul and realize why I was there, and that I was there for the same reason they were there. And so mutually, we would be better off if we linked arms and went to battle hand in hand, as opposed to me trying to, battle them and then battle the competition and battle the economy. And as it turned out, battle COVID, all the different challenges that we faced.
One thing that you shared with me, you shared with your own due diligence, that you flew to Iowa and you started asking customers or people at the grocery store if they knew Happy Joe's. And obviously you're doing that to say, what is the viability of the story? But when you were doing your due diligence before taking this, and it's a two-part question. One, are you looking at it with the lens of a franchisee? And secondly, if you are, and you come to the conclusion, we got a lot of work to do, you then took 18 months to try to make this, bring it back to franchisable to be a good opportunity for the buyer. Are you looking at it with that lens? And then how do you have the patience to wait long enough to put the machine back in order?
So to answer the first question, no, I wasn't looking at it from a franchising perspective. I was looking at it strictly, is it a viable business? Listen, we're all old enough that we've been on both sides of the selling coin. All right. And they, Happy Joe's needed a leader. So everybody was telling me the great things about the brand, but they weren't the ones buying the product. It was the guests that were buying the product. So I needed to know, what do people in the backyard of this 50-year-old brand think of the brand? Unfiltered. So that's what I tried to do in my own, unsophisticated way. Was create my own focus groups, but one guest at a time, right. Kind of a thing. And to say I was delightfully surprised would be an understatement. As we shared, I've been in this business a long time, and I've worked for some very good brands, and I've never worked for a brand where the guests had such an emotional connection, not with the product, okay, but with the actual concept of who we were, and if you brought up the name Happy Joe's to a lot of our real loyal guests, they would tell you about all the family memories that have been created around Happy Joe's. Some of them at home, some of them at the restaurant, some of them on a football field. It changes by the generation. It changes by the gender. But at the end of the day, the stories were all the same. I'd have to ask them, and how's the pizza? Okay, because they would talk about all the impact the brand had made on their lives, and then they'd say, "Oh, the pizza's unbelievable. It's the best pizza around." If you had the Taco Joe, you got to have the Taco Joe pizza, and then they'd go off on a whole different tangent about the actual product, but the product wasn't what drove it. And that's the part that fascinated me the most, is that like I said, I've worked with some very good brands, and I've never had any guest of any of those brands ever be able to talk for 10 or 20 minutes about the birthday parties that were held there, or the going away parties, or the caterings that were done, or the pizzas that were sold at the football games, at high school, and the parents sitting in the stands, for 4 or 5 kids that went to the high school, and eating that pizza, and the pizza bringing back all those fond memories, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, kind of a thing. So it was so different and so unique. I said, based on just all this goodwill, I got to be able to figure this out. And so that's kind of when I came back from Iowa and told my wife, I said, I think I'm going to accept the job. And And as I shared with you, I had already retired, and so my wife was kind of not real pleased with me kind of getting back into the war zone again. And but it's been a great run. I mean, it comes with a lot of hours and a lot of work, but you know, it's a passion, and if you have the passion for it, the hours don't matter. Because sometimes the days aren't long enough for all the things you want to get accomplished, and you get disappointed when you get tired at the end of the day, because if I only had another 2 or 3 hours, I could get so much more done, and you get up in the morning and you can't wait to get back and get started again. To me, those are the kinds of things when I talk to my kids, I try to tell them to look for the job that you love doing, not the one that pays you the most, okay, but the one that you enjoy the most, the one that gives you the best, satisfaction for what you're doing, because over time, that's what keeps you engaged and keeps you, will make you successful because you love what you're doing, and what you're doing is resonating with other people. And here it is now, 5 years later, we're growing the brand nationally, we're growing the brand internationally. And we're not without our warts. We've still got projects. I had a team meeting this morning, and we're talking about some challenges we have with POS and the functionality of our POS and things of that nature. But 4.5 years ago, if the POS system, or old terms, if the cash register rung, it was fine for me because I had bigger fish to fry. Right. But now we fixed all the big issues. And some of them weren't problems. Some of them were just the brand was dated, and when the founder passed, the folks that came in after him didn't have a vision for the brand, and they hadn't gone through this type of a refresh or a rebirth, of a brand. This is when we were having our 50th anniversary a couple of years ago. Very few people can say this, but I actually just went into some of my files at the house, and I took out 2 annual meeting programs for 2 other brands when I was there for their 50th anniversary. So this was the 3rd time I had gone through a golden anniversary with a restaurant chain. So you learn that, part of the success is, and when you come into a brand with this kind of, these kinds of gray hairs, you got to think about succession planning. That's got to be part of your strategy with the franchisees, is how do you help them sell their business if that's what they want to do? Because not everybody's got family that wants to take it over. And they've worked 30, 40, some of them have worked, almost 50 years with Happy Joe's. You don't want them just to shut down, if one of the spouses die. So you want to put a succession plan in place, so they can get, in most cases, the older franchisees own the land in the building, but you also want them to get some value, for the Happy Joe's brand that they've built. And I don't want to lose a store because someone's getting old. I want to keep that store alive, and just bring in new, fresh blood and rejuvenate it, with the same kind of passion, the prior owners had. So it takes on some different types of strategic thinking and planning than it does just to get out there and find a new hot concept and just open up a bunch of restaurants. This requires a lot of you're impacting a lot of people's lives, that wear our brand, if you do this thing right. And to me, that's the only way I know how to do it, is by doing it that way. So it's when they saw the care and the dedication and some of the things that I did to gain their trust and confidence, they knew I was all in. They didn't have to. After 6 months to a year, they knew I was all in, and all the concern and posturing that was being done, disappeared. And it's like, okay, how do we lock arms and move this thing forward? And it was good that it started like that, because at about that time is when we were in the deepest, darkest part of COVID, and we needed each other, to get through that together.
You're doing this due diligence, and obviously you've now gone through it. So you're in retrospect, you look back.
Right.
Is it disappointing to you as a restaurant operator that here you have a brand that's beloved by customers that stop being beloved by the brand? Meaning, if the team would have just continued on the pathway of staying true to creating these memories and continuing to upgrade and innovate, then the franchisees would have remained happy, would have continued scaling, sales volumes would have been high. And so you're getting in here and you're looking at this thing and you're like, people love this. You stopped loving yourself. Is that disappointing to you as a restaurant leader?
Well, it's not disappointing because I've seen it, many, many times already throughout my career. What is sad is that I don't put myself on a pedestal and say, oh, this is because I'm so much smarter than everybody else. That's not the case at all. It's why did they choose to go down the path that they did? And sometimes it's because the path that I choose is a lot tougher.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you don't get that real quick reward, by jumping up sales so you can flip the business. But I wasn't brought on to flip the business. I was brought on to stabilize the business and then grow the business. Where a lot of, like, my predecessors, they'd come in with 2-year, 3-year, 4-year plans where they were going to get in, cut, improve margins and flip it. They'll make a bunch of money and then move on down the road. But that strategy wasn't working, and so that's why the investors that were, the bigger investors in the company made the decision that they can't get convinced that this is a short-term game. You got to look at it from the long term, and so they were looking for somebody that had come in and done it multiple times instead of had been part of a team that did it once.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. Yeah, can somebody at 45 years old theoretically run circles around me at my age? Yeah, of course they can. They're 25, 30 years younger than I am in some cases. But it's not always about just the physical stamina. Okay, it's about the wisdom that you've gained and the experiences that you have. Because sometimes it's not how hard you work, it's how smart you work. And if I know where a lot of the landmines are planted, I won't step on them. Okay, so I can get things done at a quicker pace than somebody else that doesn't know where they are. So I don't have any ill will for the people that came before me. I do feel bad for the brand because emotionally I am connected to the brand now. And when I see how much people love what we do, it's like, we went through a tough time there for a few years. And it wasn't even the time that I joined the company. It was the time from when Joe passed away, and then the family sold the business, and it was kind of rudderless. Yeah. That kind of a thing. That's where I think the guests, maybe got a little confused. They love the brand now. We don't have any issues with any of that today, but it's just, they went through that period of, mediocrity that really didn't need to be there, and
it carried over to the franchisees, and ultimately, like when you're getting involved there,
yes,
you're rebuilding relationships with these franchisees, because if you let the mediocrity hit franchisees and franchisees let mediocrity hit their staff, the mediocrity is going to hit their customers. And therefore I still have amazing memories that were built at Happy Joe's, but my current day experience feels worn and tired, which is worn and tired by the staff, which is worn and tired by the franchisees, which is worn and tired by the franchisor. And so when you get in there and you're starting to pick this up, that started making a difference. I would imagine, because you've done this before. It's like you have your blueprint, you're going to turn something around, you work through this. And you've said this on this call, we talked about this last week, that time, like you want to get things done yesterday. Do you feel like you're obviously proud of the work that you put in? You obviously know how much is left to go on the blueprint to continue to get this there. What's the vision currently now that you've established this?
Well, just because of the way I am built, I can't go fast enough. Because if I had an endless time frame, I could see us having 500 or 1,000 restaurants, probably 500, 600, 700 of them across the U.S. and another 200 or 300 around the world. And I don't know what I don't know, right? So I can only go as fast as I can go, but knowing what the reception has been so far, I could see how we could just really just light things up in an incredibly, successful way and create a lot of magical memories, for families all across the U.S. and around the globe, and create a lot of strong net worth for independent business people that are franchisees, and make the shareholders at Happy Joe's, get a really strong return on their investment. It's just, how much of that game am I going to be a part of? So to me, I'm doing two things at one time. I'm focused on moving the ball down the field, but I'm also focused on growing the bench, because you don't know what you don't know, and so, at some point when when COVID was on, I got really sick with COVID in Iowa, and I mean really sick, where I couldn't get out of bed, probably for 2 weeks. And, so you don't, and, it was all the stuff on the news about people dying and all that kind of stuff. And, so I wouldn't even let my family come up and see me because I was afraid they might get contaminated. Okay. Or, I didn't want them to drive from, Central Texas, it's a 15, 20-hour drive, and I certainly didn't want them getting on a plane, because I thought that's how I caught it, was traveling. I was never a big fan of those masks, so I tried not to wear them, as often as I could, get away with it. But, so it creates a reality check for you. So it's okay, do the best you can do today, on the development of the up and coming team, and on the focus on growing the brand, in today's world.
Well, look, I mean, I think the brand, like what you're talking about, though, you're pushing reset, not for today. You're pushing reset for the next 20 years. And probably previous leaders pushed reset for the day, but had to continually come back in the next day and push reset because they weren't setting up a foundation. And so it was like carrying things on, but having to reset. And I imagine, like, I mean, you know how to build brands. Like, the pathway one could have been, screw it, Happy Joe's is gone, we're building Tom's Pizza tomorrow, and this is now the concept that we're moving forward. But the challenge in that is you start looking backwards at all these memories, and the built-in, like the survival of brand affinity had to be so high. So then get in there, fix the franchisees, make sure they have succession planning for their units, for new blood, make sure that they have a brand that they can believe in that proves profitability through unit level economics, and then set up your internal staff so that eventually you're going to hand the keys over to someone that says, cool, I see this roadmap. Here's how we're going to continue to progress forward because we pushed an ultimate reset on a business for ultimate growth.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's spot on. If you had to sum it up, and put it into an elevator ride, that would be the exact answer. But unfortunately, it's not that easy, right? It's like, because every day there's a different battle you fight, and sometimes when you think you've got it exactly where you want it, then somebody else has a medical issue. Okay, whether we had a franchisee pass away 2 months ago, unexpectedly, or you have an employee, whose mother passes away, and now he has to leave and move to Florida to take care of his elderly father. So it's not like we're working in a perfect world. So that's why you've got to be able to, multitask a lot of these different things all at one time, because the franchisees are appreciative, okay, that I'm compassionate, but at the end of the day, it's like, hey, I'm paying you the royalty, take care of me.
Yeah.
That other stuff is just, white noise. The shareholders on the other side of the coin, right? It's like, hey, I really feel bad, Tom, but we've got millions and millions of dollars invested in the brand. Okay, your job is to bring back some return on investment for the investment that we've made. Yeah. And I don't disagree with any of that. That's why I say you got to be able to multitask and juggle more than one ball at a time. And I understand what the pressure points are. So a lot of the issues I deal with, the franchisees never hear about, the investors never hear about, because it's counterproductive to what they're focused on. And to me, I know that's those are the roads you have to go down to get to the point where both parties, the franchisees and the investors, are going to get the return that they're looking for. So it's just all part and parcel, of what you have to do to be successful, particularly in today's real complicated, restaurant industry. I mean, nobody would have saw, 3-4 years ago how much food costs had gone up. When I got to Happy Joe's, they hadn't taken a price increase in 2.5 years. And then we took 3 price increases in 1 year because of the way the inflation was ramping up. So it's throwing a lot of curveballs. So if you didn't have the experience and some of the wherewithal to draw on, it could be really, really challenging. So I could see why, every day in our industry, you pick up one of the trades and you read about some big brands filed bankruptcy. And we had some financial challenges ourselves. I mean, when the family sold all the real estate, it created some challenges for us financially. Mm-hmm. So we had to, fix that problem, with those landlords, and so that, that kind of, I don't say derailed us, but, it took probably 4 or 5 months of, having, the accelerator to the floor where I had to back off. I'm someone that's all gas, no brakes, but I couldn't have the accelerator all the way to the floor because we had some other extraneous things going on that I was dealing with as well.
Well, it's a turnaround specialist. I mean, your audience is, you have the investment group who's like, get us a return. And you're like, cool, we're going to need some capital to get you a return. They're like, capital? We've already put in enough. It's like, okay. That's right. And we have franchisees who are like, you're like, okay, here's what we're going to turn around. We got to make your units look pretty. They're like, make it look pretty. That takes money. Okay. Now we got to figure out like how we can balance out that. Then it's like, okay, now we got to take care of our staff. And the staff's like, yeah, but this is how it's always been done. And then you get down to the customer and they're like, yeah, this isn't the Happy Joe's that I used to be at. And so a turnaround specialist has to look at it almost with blinders and say, I have no other choice but to go up. And so that's the juggling that had to be done in order to push a hard reset. So if this brand is going to be around 10, 20, 50 years from now, it has to go through this trekking to say we have to come out this other side, reinvent it as a new business.
Yeah, but to add to that, what's important to me is that during that process, we don't lose the DNA that we've created in the first, 45, 48 years before I got here. Because it still has to be Happy Joe's when we, come out of this turnaround.
Yeah.
Okay. People have a certain expectation. Grandparents brought their kids there. Those kids are now grown adults and are bringing their kids there. So when you're feeding 3, sometimes even 4 generations of families in our restaurants, there's a certain level of expectation, and so we can't all of a sudden decide, okay, we're going to become Mod Pizza. Okay. Or we're going to take another, approach and we're just going to be Papa John's.
Right.
Okay. I mean, then you lose all,
yeah.
what I think you lose all the value in the brand that has kept it alive for all these years and has allowed you to sustain the challenges of COVID and the brand being, the founder passing and the family selling the brand, and bringing in, I'm the 4th, CEO since the founder passed away. And that's only like in 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So there's been a whole, and I've been here for almost 5, so the other ones came and went pretty quickly because it wasn't the right fit for them, and I didn't know them, and they may have been good restaurant people, but it requires a certain kind of, cachet and a certain style, to be able to deal with, and and a lot of the franchisees are older. So I think it's a benefit that I'm older, because we talk to each other like peers. It's easier. I mean, think about it. If you're trying to talk to your dad and his buddies and coach them on how to do something right, at some point in time, someone's going to say, "Hey, listen, whippersnapper, I'm 30 or 40 years older than you. Okay, what can you possibly teach me?" Now, if we're talking about a smartphone, they're probably going to be all ears, okay, or a computer or something like that. But if it's basic stuff like cooking a pizza, they're going to say, well, "Listen, we've been doing this longer than you've been around," and so you got to be sensitive to who your audience is, and I think that's part of what's allowed me to get the ship turned as quickly as it did, because I'm a peer to most of our franchisees. And now the last 2 years, the new franchisees that are coming in look up to me because they're about my kids' age, which is late 30s all the way to 50, so they're looking up to, instead of me looking up to them as some young, new hot CEO coming in, who really can't relate to who, because the ultimate consumer is our pizza dining guest. But it's a how I look at the business is it's really a 3-headed dragon. Okay, because I got to take care of the consumer, I got to take care of the franchisees who are another consumer, and then I got to take care of the shareholders. Okay, because all 3 of those parties have got an investment.
Yeah.
And you could even say staff, but staff are paid. Okay, that's the piece that's different. The other 3 are making contributions.
Yeah.
The guest is spending their money with us, the franchisees are paying us, and the investors have bought the company. Yeah. So they're all out of pocket. Employees are a valuable part as well, but they could walk tomorrow and find another job.
Yeah,
these other folks are all invested.
Yeah.
Now the consumers invested more emotionally, okay, than our investors or our franchisees are. But all 3 of those, that to me is the the three legs of the stool that I gotta balance at all times. Because if one of those legs isn't strong to support the other two, then the stool's going to tip over. And that's kind of what happened to my predecessors. They didn't know how to balance that three-legged stool.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna say this in closing. Obviously, you've built a career around being the turnaround specialist, so you are built for this, which is why retirement sounds great. But you're like, hey, I have my blueprint. It's like riding a bike. I'm gonna get back on the bike. I'm gonna have some fun. The reality is, if you look at in the pizza category, Domino's did a great job of pushing the hard reset and came out and said, our pizza is not good. We got to fix this. You could go to legacy brands. A Taco Bell came through and said, our brand is old and tired. We got to find a way to reconnect with customers. Look at like a Popeyes that got old and tired and pushed the reset. This happens with a lot of brands. And this is probably like what you said. Part of the magic is you can relate in life experience to a lot of the franchisees, so that on mission one, at least we're relatable. We've been through a lot of shit together, and then from a blueprint standpoint, you're able to put it back in place. Which then, in turn, what we said is you're pushing reset for 20 years from now, so that when new blood is coming in and franchisees are saying, "I would like to be a part of the system," they're believing in not what's happening currently. They're also believing in what you're setting up for the future based on your life and business experience. And I think that's awesome. And clearly you're setting this thing up for its next stage of the story. And frankly, I'm appreciative that you shared some of it with us today.
Well, I'm honored that you were inquisitive enough to even ask to hear some of it. But I will tell you though, it's a lot more fun doing what I'm doing than being retired. Okay. There are days when I want to pull my hair out. There are days when my wife wants me to kind of pack my suitcase and go back to Iowa. But in the big picture, if you look at it from a 365-day perspective, there's only maybe like 5 of those days a year.
Yeah.
The other 360, in the chair that I sit in, you couldn't have drawn up a better script for me to star in. Okay. It's just got so much of what's needed that is just natural to me. I mean, I grew up in a family of restaurant operators, Italian. So pizza is in my blood, small town operators, like we are at Happy Joe's. So much of it was not just, the luck of the draw, but it just happened to be in my veins, from a DNA standpoint. So it lined up really well with what the needs were, at Happy Joe's. And I think that's part of the reason why it's been a pretty good run and why, it just keeps getting better and better and better, so yeah, believe me, I thank the good Lord on more than one occasion, every week for blessing me, with this opportunity. Because that's what I said to my wife. I said, at the end of the day, because she said to me, why do you need to do this? And I said, the real reason I want to do, I don't need to do this, but that I want to do this, I want my grandkids to experience the magic that we created at Happy Joe's.
That's right.
And we don't have any restaurants down here in Texas. And so that became really the driving force. Fix the brand, open some restaurants in Texas, let my little grandkids, have the opportunity to grow up with the brand, just like my kids grew up with BJ's and Red Robin.
Yeah.
Okay, I was long gone, when they were teenagers and college age, but they were there during the formative years. And so they got dragged into a lot of the stuff that I was involved in. Oh, you're coming to this VIP families and friends party. We need to feed some people. We need guinea pigs, okay, to practice cooking our burgers or baking our pizzas, and so when you do that, you'd like to see the family enjoy the benefits. And now it doesn't matter where my kids going in the USA, they're always, hey, Pops, I saw a BJ's, in Charleston. Was that one of the ones that you opened? That kind of stuff. It's got value to me as a dad, separate from a restaurant executive.
Yeah.
And to me that's special, and that's what I love about it, and why I get up every day excited to make an impact.
Well, I think people retire because they're done having fun, and you found fun. And what you're talking about is legacy, and that's what you're building. And I look forward to seeing how the story turns out. So,
well, I'm hoping you're going to be contributing to the script.
I already am. This is
I know I know you are.
This has been great, though. Tom, thanks for doing this. For Tom, I'm Nick. This was another Franchisor Hot Seat. Take